Buying a car in Carvana was so easy. I was able to finance it through them.
Whoa, wait, you mean finance?
Yeah, finance. Got pre-qualified for a Carvana auto loan, entered my terms, and shot from thousands of great car options all within my budget.
That's cool, but financing through Carvana was so easy.
Financed. Done. And I get to pick up my car from their Carvana vending machine tomorrow.
Financed.
Right, that's what I said.
You can spend time trying to pronounce financing, or you can actually finance and buy your car today on
Carvana.
Financing subject to credit approval. Additional terms and conditions may apply.
This is the story of the one. As head of maintenance at a concert hall, he knows the show must always go on. That's why he works behind the scenes, ensuring every light is working, the HVAC is humming, and his facility shines. With Grainger's supplies and solutions for every challenge he faces, plus 24/7 customer support, his venue never misses a beat. Call quickgrainger.com or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Welcome to another episode of the Dynasty Gambit. My name is Ben McCowan, and I am joined here with Austin Jacobson, and we're here to talk about some overreactions for Week 1 and what you can do to really help your Dynasty team moving forward. All right, so another fantasy season getting started here, and as you can see, I'm wearing the Marv jersey right here, Austin. It's an exciting time. He had a pretty good Week 1, but we're not going to count the chickens just yet. How'd you feel, man, about Week 1 and kind of how things ended up this last week?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty typical Week 1 where you have your Quentin Johnstons and your Hollywood Browns and that go off and score a lot of points, and you have your Jamar Chase and your AJ Brown that put up stinkers, and then people are freaking out both ways. But that happens every year. Week 1, there's always top guys underperforming and people out of nowhere scoring a lot of points. You just have to stay the course and try to capitalize where you can on excels or overhyped buy. So we'll talk about some of that tonight.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, this episode is going to be coming out hopefully Saturday or Sunday morning before Week 2. So we will actually talk a little bit of Thursday night football between the Packers and Commanders and, some of the takeaways from that game as well. But I wanted to go ahead and start off with some players that you can start to buy low on, right? Buy the dip. And there's one that sticks in my mind. I'm hoping I don't get burned with this player, but Kenneth Walker, right? So, of course, we see last week that he splits the backfield with Zach Charbonnet, and Zach Charbonnet actually gets a little bit more of the carry load last week. Is it due to a little bit of Kenneth Walker injury? Possibly. But, where do we see this shaking out? And to me, I think this is still a perfect time to buy low on Kenneth Walker, possibly on whether he stays with the Seahawks or ends up on another team. And for me at this point, I still think he's worth a low end first or possibly 2 seconds. Austin, where do you stand on Kenneth Walker at this point?
So I do think it's a good buying opportunity if you can buy him low. I would not pay a first for him today. I think if you can get, I think it kind of goes without saying if you can sit a second for him, somebody panic selling, but even 2 seconds, I think, is a reasonable price. Charbonnet scored the touchdown. Charbonnet had more touches. I think that'll ebb and flow. I don't think Zach Charbonnet is going away. There'll be some weeks where Walker has more, some weeks where Charbonnet has more, but I think that they can both be viable options. I think you just have to have tempered expectations for Kenneth Walker. I think that it's a very intentional thing to split the workload. Walker's had an injury history, pretty much every year. So I think they want to make sure that to keep him healthy. But Sam Darnold did not look good Week 1. That could change. but other than throwing to JSN, there was no passing game. I think there was like only like 3 other catches besides JSN the whole game. So I expect this to be a team that has to really rely on a run game. And so I think both guys will be fantasy viable. I think you just have to adjust expectations. I think if you can sell Charbonnet,
that was my next question.
If he's become the number one, I think that's fine too. But I actually would rather kind of just hold both guys and see how this shakes out. I'm not panic selling Kenneth Walker, but I'm not sure he would be personally. I'm not sure he would be top of my list of guys to buy right now. I think it's just I think I'm not sure I really see the ceiling right now.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think definitely, unfortunately, just a burner in redraft, right? It's going to hurt to see the split load there. But in Dynasty, we're going to have to wait and see. Now, going to an offense that was a little bit more high-powered last season. And going into this offseason, a lot of people were really excited about it. I'm not too worried about the Detroit Lions offense. I think you look at week 1 and you could take that as a major overreaction, because we even saw, going back to this Thursday night, the Packers defense is really Super Bowl, level of Super Bowl contention at this point, right? Like they're looking amazing out there with Micah Parsons and Lucas Van Ness really like stepping into his role at this point. But to me, Gibbs, Monty, Jameson Williams, Amon-Ra St. Brown, I'm not panicking at this point. And I do think that you could possibly look to some of those other fantasy owners who are panicking at this point. They're worried about possibly the offensive coordinator change, the issues with the offensive line, which I think they'll get figured out. But would you get somebody like, Jahmyr Gibbs, for who in the offseason was going at, roughly around 3 firsts, roughly what Bijan Robinson was going at? And could you get him possibly for 2 first plus, or even somebody who might be selling him for 2 firsts, right? Or you talk about a Monty who could roughly go for a 2nd round pick and help you on a contender. And then we talk about a Jameson Williams who, just like with Kenneth Walker, you could possibly get for 2 seconds. Where's the temperature on that, Austin?
I find it hard to believe it could happen. I find it hard to believe that many people are going to be freaking out about Jahmyr Gibbs having a bad week and scoring. What did he score? 15 points, even in a bad week. So I find it hard to believe that will happen. But if it does, if you can buy him for 2 firsts, I would do that all day. I had my concerns about Monty going into the season. I just think every year that Jahmyr Gibbs continues to be a beast, he's going to get more and more of the workload. It's just going to naturally happen. We even saw, it's a 1-game sample size, but Gibbs was getting a lot more of those early down reps, because you would see a lot of the time last year Monty would be the first running back in the game and then basically split drives. But I think Gibbs is going to be more of the guy this year. But I don't think anything we saw from Monty last week changes preseason expectations. So, if you can get him for a second, I think that's fine. I'm not sure people are necessarily selling for a second, but if people are thinking, I'm out on this Lions offense, he's option number 5 on this offense, I just want a second, I'm fine with paying a second for him. Jameson Williams, I think, is a great buy low. Still have good expectations. This is the package with Jameson Williams. He's going to have games where he doesn't score hardly anything, because he's going to have games where he scores 35, and that's going to happen again this year. So, in a 1-week sample size, the fact that he had a bad game, I can't. Do you remember how many points he scored?
I think he had not exactly points, but I know he had 4 catches for 20-something yards.
Yeah,
and
so single
he was out
points.
there for He was out there for 95% of snaps. Right, so they want to utilize him.
Yeah, he's clearly going to be a big part of that offense. It's just the game where the offense struggles, like you said. Packers made everybody on Washington look bad. There was some garbage time stats last night from Debo and McLaurin and even Zach Ertz, but they basically got blanked through 3 quarters. So I think Jameson Williams is a good buy low. Jared Goff is a good buy low. I think a lot of people, are freaking out about him in our guillotine league that we're in. I actually got him for $0. Nobody bid on him except for me. So it's one of those things where it's like, for context, the only quarterback on the waivers besides the guy who got cut was Spencer Rattler. So there was no starting quarterbacks, and still people didn't want to bid on him. So I think people are very low on Goff, and Goff is going to be fine. I think it's a big overreaction. So
So
You know,
to touch a
if
little
you can
bit
get 2
more,
seconds. Anything less than a first for I would do.
yeah. To go back to a little bit more to Amon Ra, right? I think we were talking about it in our group chat, and Dalton had sold Amon Ra for JSN in a first, which I think, we both agreed that was a good deal in being able to get an extra first out of, tiering down to JSN. But soon enough here, we may see a point where JSN climbs up to Amon Ra's level, and Amon Ra kind of starts to come down to earth a little bit. But do you think he kind of stays in that same tier, or do you think Amon Ra kind of comes down and starts to also come down in value?
Well, I think Amon Ra is one of those guys that he's a very volume dependent player. So, if the Lions' whole passing offense is really struggling, I think he'll be hurt almost more than anybody. Again, I just don't think it's worth overreacting to a 1-game sample size. I think that if we see this for 2 or 3 weeks in a row, it's like, I think then we start being concerned. Bears have a decent defense, but I still expect them to kind of get back on track this week. We'll see.
Yeah.
I think he's my expectations for Amon Ra basically haven't changed. So
This is the story of the one. As a maintenance supervisor at a manufacturing facility, he knows keeping the line up and running is a top priority. That's why he chooses Grainger. Because when a drive belt gets damaged, Grainger makes it easy to find the exact specs for the replacement product he needs. And next-day delivery helps ensure he'll have everything in place and running like clockwork. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
I would be fine if somebody's panic selling, trying to get him that deal that you mentioned, tearing off of him and getting a guy like JSN and a first. I'm doing that all day because I think, we saw JSN is going to be a target hog on Seattle. Honestly, he kind of is playing the Amon Ra role in that offense, and you're getting a first on top. I'm definitely fine with something like that. But otherwise, I'm not going to panic sell Amon Ra right now.
Yeah. I mean, if anything, you can use that deal as a gauge and possibly trade JSN in a second to get Amon Ra, right?
Yeah.
Because we know that Amon Ra is that's probably equivalent, right? That Amon Ra at this point, to me, you're getting a good deal if you can give up JSN in a second to pick up Amon Ra. So, that's what it could take to move up to that tier. And if you can buy him low at this, I mean, to me, that is buying low for Amon Ra. Would you agree?
Didn't we see a deal? Maybe it was Chris. It was somebody in our.
Oh, it was Chev. It sent Egbuka in a first. Egbuka in a second.
Egbuka in a second for Amon Ra. I think that's something like that. Yeah, I'm doing that. Definitely. So if you can get. Yeah. I mean, I love Egbuka, but it's kind of one of those things where it's like if Egbuka hits the ceiling, he becomes an Amon Ra. So if you're, I would gladly trade potential plus a second for a guy that has been that. I mean, he's been rock solid. I think he's been like a top 8 receiver, like 3 or 4 years. So you safe with Amon Ra. So something like that. JSN in a second. I'm at Egbuka in a second. Yeah, I'm going to do that. But if you have to give a first on top of JSN, I'd rather have the JSN side, but there's a balance there.
And I think the ceiling for me for Egbuka is like giving up a first to get Amon Ra. I don't even know that I want to do that because I do really love the path that Egbuka is taking. If you can give up Egbuka in 2 seconds, I think I'd feel a little bit better about that. But I do think a lot of dynasty owners are a little bit wiser on that. Try to send out offers. Really, that's what it comes down to, guys. Is you never know what the other owner is going to end up saying. Throw it out there as a gauge and see what happens. And sometimes those things end up landing and sticking.
And I know we're a dynasty show, right? But in redraft, I think Egbuka is a good sell right now because they didn't put Godwin on IR. They do say they expect him to play till week 5. But he's already practicing in a limited capacity. So even if he doesn't play till week 5, it looks like good chance he'll be 100% at that point. And not that necessarily Egbuka won't perform, but I do think it's just there's going to be a lot of mouths to feed in that offense. And, it could be like, last year you had K. Otton getting all those targets, and then Mike Evans comes back and he kind of fades off at the end of the year. So there's just only so many mouths to feed, and I think Egbuka's got an incredibly bright future ahead of him. But I think have a little bit more tempered expectations for him for this year, just because I'm not sure he's going to go out there and be scoring 20 points every single week.
Yeah, we knew the first 5 weeks he was going to be the wide receiver 2 on that offense.
Yeah.
And even complements Mike Evans well enough to the point where, they're both wide receiver 1s on that offense. So, moving on to
more than one last week.
Right.
Yeah.
Moving on to a wide receiver 1 that, he's kind of a hot topic and has been all off season, because for the longest time we've really undervalued him and then said he's too old to where it's like now is the time to sell. But AJ Brown puts up 1.8 fantasy points last week in full PPR scoring, and I'm not worried. I'm really not worried. I think this is probably the most major overreaction from last week. And that's why AJ Brown is in our thumbnail, besides a man we're going to be talking about later. But AJ Brown is the wide receiver 1 in that offense. And, the game script just ended up not working out where he got 1 target in the third quarter. And that's basically the only time that he was targeted, or the first time that he was targeted.
I think it was just the 1 target at the very end of the game on the second to last play of the game.
Yeah. That's not going to happen.
Yeah,
because Philly sports beat writers going in, talking with Sirianni, like talking with Jalen Hurts, like AJ Brown's like, he's gonna get his, right. Yeah. He is the alpha in that offense, and it's gonna happen where he's gonna be getting his targets back. And I can't fathom why anybody would be freaking out at this point, guys. This is dynasty. We need to keep a lid on it with that. And to me, if you can get AJ Brown for a first and a second, I think I want to do that, right? He's got the talent to be worth 2 firsts when he's performing at his best, right? A little bit of the issue is the age there, right? He's 29. You're investing in a contender to really take you to that next level. But I think a first and a second gives you a little bit of insulation in, the amount of value that you're giving up to get a wide receiver 1 on your team.
Yeah, I think AJ Brown, talent-wise and ceiling-wise, is right there with Jefferson, Chase, and Lamb. I think he is the closest to that tier as far as just sheer talent. But games like this happen because they're just such a low-volume passing offense, and it really is going to be. So we have to just have that. It's the way it really was last year. He still got his own. I believe he was like wide receiver 11 or 12 or 13, 11 to 13, somewhere in that range in points per game. He did miss a few games, but in points per game. And I think if you have that expectation that he's a low-end wide receiver 1, he'll finish wide receiver 10 to 12 more than likely. As long as you have that expectation, I think you'll be fine. I think if you're expecting him to re-enter the elite tier, I think you're going to be disappointed. But I definitely don't think, kind of like what we talked about with Amon Ra, don't panic sell after 1 week. There'll be different game scripts. There'll be games where they're behind and they have to throw. The defense doesn't look quite as good as it did last year. Even the offensive line, I mean, it's hard to tell from 1 game, but it looked a little bit. I mean, the running game was not quite as smooth. Hurts did a lot of big things on kind of broken plays and rolling outside the pocket, but Barkley was, for the most part, pretty bottled up compared to the way he was last year. So there will be games where they struggle to, get off to a strong start and they're behind and have to throw the ball. So, and we know the talent is there. That's not a question. So, yeah, like you said, the first and the second, I'm doing that all day for AJ Brown.
Interesting thing about AJ Brown, and I'm actually going to kind of shout out fellow podcast out there, FF Dynasty, with our friend Chev, who is a regular guest on there. But they had Quality Stats, who is one of their statisticians that they bring on from time to time, and they were going over who his model loves in redraft, and AJ Brown was like one of the top guys. And the reason why was they thought with Philly being one of the lowest pass rate offenses last year, and Saquon, of course, coming into this year, another year older, them possibly having to kind of give him a little bit of load management. The thought was the passing game opens up a lot more, right? And really the targets then go more to Devonta, more to AJ Brown, more. And so, I'm still holding on the fact that AJ Brown is going to be the guy for them. It's just, like you said, you're going to have these up and down weeks. So I think go out there, make some offers. If you can get him for a first and a second on a contender, I'm feeling pretty good about that. And then kind of cover our last guy on ones to buy the dip on. And this one really, I don't know that everybody's going out in the streets feeling this way, but Omarion Hampton, right? I think a lot of people look at preseason, they looked at the first game and they're like, oh, he doesn't look good. But it's not him, right? I think it's he just didn't have the opportunity with that offense to show what he can do just yet. And so I think if you're on a rebuilder, you're on even potentially a contender and you have the capital to be able to spend on an Omarion Hampton, I would be okay spending that draft capital to bring in the RB1 on that Chargers offense.
Yeah, this is one of the more baffling ones to me because you see a guy, if you had high expectations for him, you took him with your number 2 pick in your rookie draft, let's say. I don't think it could have almost been a better start as far as like usage, workload. They used him almost every single down. I believe he had close to a 90% snap share. Obviously, Najee Harris was getting work back in. I don't think that's sustainable, but they love him. I mean, he made a big mistake right before halftime, stepping out of bounds there and hoping the Chiefs be able to get that field goal. And Harbaugh said basically, it's my fault. I shouldn't have put him in that position. So they didn't even blame him for that at all. I feel like that was a lot of the reaction on X. I saw lots of people saying like, oh, he's in the doghouse now. I don't think that's the case at all. He had a great 4th down run in a big situation that helped them. It's amazing how much a difference getting a touchdown, which is largely just totally hard to quantify. Like there's so much variance with touchdowns week to week, especially in a 1-week sample. Because I think Ashton Genty was way more bottled up than Hampton, but he got it in the end zone, and so people felt better about that game. I'm not worried about Genty either, but I'm just saying, I mean, Hampton was a more efficient runner than Genty. The offensive line for the Chargers looks better than the Raiders. So I think if you're alarmed about Hampton, you should be alarmed about Genty, but I'm not alarmed about any of them. And I think that if people are already giving up on him after 1 week, when it's not like he went out and, it wasn't like even Jahmyr Gibbs. Remember Jahmyr Gibbs week 1 of his rookie season where he barely got any touches and everybody's freaking out. Even then, obviously it worked out, but I'm saying it's not even a situation like that. Hampton was a workhorse for them.
Right.
And although I do think Najee will get more touches, I expect Hampton to be the lead guy all year long. I mean, when you drafted him, right? When you drafted him at the 2nd pick, you were expecting him to not be the starter for the first 6 weeks or so, right? He was going to get worked his way in. So the fact that you get here week 1, he's a workhorse, like among the leading workhorses in the NFL in 1 week, nothing but positive, nothing but a bonus from what you expected. So that one baffled me, the way people were freaking out online about that one.
I think you bring up a good point. Looking up at the snap shares for, especially running backs, the usage of how many plays they're in on, and because like to bring up another one, right? And I think actually I do have this one up later, but that was actually our last of the buy, try to buy lows. But we'll kind of touch on some of this others. I wanted to bring up earlier Travis Etienne. Travis Etienne had 71% snap share in week 1 and proved to be the RB1 in the Jacksonville offense. Now, we'll dive deeper later because he is one of the guys that we're possibly thinking about selling high, but it depends on the situation. But I think it is really interesting. You guys just have to pay attention to the snap share week 1. We don't have a lot to go off of. There's a small sample size when it comes to week 1 versus later on in the season. So always look for some of those little nuggets, just like, looking at the usage of how they use running backs.
I love looking at usage. I mean, people were talking about, CMC was on the field the whole game. He was a 76% snap share. Omarion Hampton was an 80% snap share. Just
exactly. So I'm not worried about Omarion Hampton. Again, if you're a rebuilder and you can, sell high off of some of these, because how would you feel, right? If the rest of your team was not looking so hot and you had a player like Jahmyr Gibbs or Bijan Robinson, right? And you were to tear down from either of those running backs, because we know like holding on to running backs on a rebuilder is not always the best move, right? We want to try and and move off of running backs when possible to move to a more stable position like receiver, quarterback, anything like that, especially in super flex. But how would you feel about like a down tier from Bijan Robinson or Jahmyr Gibbs to, getting Hampton and a first, hopefully mid first or better, plus another, promising asset. Let's say like a Jameson Williams or something like that.
Yeah, I think I'd consider. I don't know if you get this, but I would definitely do Hampton and 2 firsts for either of those guys.
Yeah.
But consider a first, a second, or a player like Jameson Williams, I think is worth a first. So if you can get Hampton, Jameson Williams in a first, I think that would be, and it just gives you more assets to split. I think that there'll be a window for Hampton to possibly get 2 firsts at some point this year. If he keeps up this usage rate, he'll have a game where he scores 2 touchdowns. So even if it's just tearing off a running back to tear off again, and you end up with basically 4 firsts worth of value for a running back, anytime you can do that. I think it's similar to what we talked about in our trade show where we were talking about on a contender. Obviously, this is before the injury, but the Mixon and 2 firsts, where it's like, okay, there's some insulated value there. You've taken like having all your chips on one player. You have the 2 firsts banked. You have a guy that can perform now. And even if the rest of your team falls apart, he should hold value. Now, obviously, things change there with the injury, but even more so with a young running back where, God forbid, he gets a season-ending injury tomorrow, right? He's still going to hold a lot of value. People are going to still have high expectations for him going into next year because of his draft capital and the way he was using the offense. So even though he's a running back, I think a rookie running back drafted in the first round has very good insulated value. And so I don't mind tearing down to him if you get a bunch of picks or stuff equal to 2 firsts in a deal.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I think we talk about players to buy the dip on, right? There's also the players to sell. And we definitely saw some outlier performances that we're not used to from some of these players we're about to talk about. But the first one I wanted to bring up was a pretty big one, Hollywood Brown. And I watched that game, and I think you and I both talked about how we had certain lineup situations where we both had to start Hollywood Brown because of injuries or whatever. And man, that was a nice spot to get 19 points right off the bat for my wide receiver 3 on my lineup. So, you look at it with Worthy and Rice returning to the offense in some weeks, right? Rice had the 6-game suspension. Worthy, right now he's returning to practice and he is foregoing surgery. So he could be back in 2 to 3 weeks. And we'll see how that all holds up if he ends up being able to finish out the season. But now still probably would be the time to try and sell Hollywood Brown if you get the chance, because even on a contender, I just don't know that it's going to end up lasting through the season where you could be able to liquidate and get some value picks, possibly some other players, whether it's a 1-for-1 of a player that we normally would value higher than Hollywood Brown. Like, I think you need to do that if possible, but could you get a high-end second or 2 seconds out of Hollywood Brown? That would be lovely for me. I would love that. I highly doubt you get a first, but if possible, try and get out within the next few weeks.
Yeah. So I actually think for me, I would trade him for any second. I think that Hollywood Brown's going to I think he's going to have a couple more of these games. He's going to score 15 points a game for 3 or 4 weeks. But my biggest takeaway from watching that game is Rashee Rice is going to be a top 5 receiver when he gets back. He was getting all of the targets on the routes that Rashee Rice runs. And, obviously Rice is a much more talented. No offense to Hollywood Brown, but Rice is a much more talented receiver than him. And once he's in that offense, he's going to immediately assume that role. And so I don't mind on a contender that has a couple injuries at wide receiver if you can trade 2/3 to get Hollywood for a couple weeks to help you fill the gap. But I wouldn't pay a second, because I just think if you can get a second, I would do it. If you can get, like you were saying, 2 seconds all day, because I think there's a good chance in 3 or 4 weeks he goes back to he's a 6 or 7 point per game guy for the rest of the year. I just don't. It's entirely volume based off of them having literally nobody else. For portions of that game, it was just him and Tyquan Thornton.
And Juju Smith-Schuster, who
Yeah,
has
Juju,
also been off the radar for a long time.
But yeah, he was in and out of the game. Like there were times in 2 receiver sets it was him and Tyquan Thornton, and I was like, man, yeah, of course they're gonna throw him the ball. And Kelsey, he had that nice touchdown play. Other than that, was doing nothing. I mean, he was literally kind of standing around out there. I don't know. I don't know if they had him just out there as a decoy. I definitely think there's some concern with Kelsey. In fact, I think we didn't talk about it, but Kelsey might be a good sell off that touchdown game. He looks slow and inefficient. I'll watch him prove me wrong and go out and score 30 points this week. But man, if Kelsey can't score early in the season with basically no target competition, it's not going to be good when those guys come back. So
right,
yeah. But yeah, for me, Hollywood Brown is overall a sell. If you can get 2 seconds or even 1 second, really.
Here's a good one for you, Austin.
I don't mind a short-term buy because I do think he's going to have a 3 or 4 week window of being a very solid wide receiver 2 in your lineup because just no one else will throw the ball to.
Jalen Royals in a second for Hollywood Brown. So trade his teammate, get his teammate on your team, and a second. And we know that Jalen Royals is going to be definitely a little bit more involved into that offense once that whole core starts to kind of develop. And even if he isn't, you got a second on top. So those are definitely the deals you want to be looking at, especially as, we have this time right now where Rice and Worthy are out and you can possibly make that deal happen.
Can you trade Hollywood in a second for Worthy?
That would be
maybe not, but
if you could make it happen, that would be a great deal.
Yeah.
So moving on to some man, I can't believe we're talking about this guy being the QB2 last week, but Daniel Jones and what he is, it's tough because easily on a retool or a rebuilding, you're selling right now. And I don't know, if anybody's going to bite. I mean, I think there's probably a contender out there that will, but what do you get, right? I mean, do you essentially hope for a second? Because again, this is another situation. I don't think you're getting a first. Or do you hope that you get 2/3 even on a retooling team or a rebuilder?
So I think he's a hold right now, honestly. I just don't think the market's there. I think people understand what Daniel Jones is. I mean, we had 2 years ago a game, I think it was week 2 against Arizona where he scored 32 points. And then after that, he proceeded to score 5, 11, 7, and then got hurt and then was benched the rest of the season after that. And so we've seen him have some big games. This game, like the offense looked really good and they were in on a roll. They're obviously not going to have games where they score every single drive like they did there. But his fantasy production is greatly inflated by 2 short touchdown runs. And so he scored 30 points. Without those 2, he would have been 18. Now, obviously, I hate if he hadn't done these things, he would have had a bad game if he hadn't done the good things that he did. But what I'm saying is 18 is nothing too special. And there's just no way that Jonathan Taylor is not getting a lot of those carries as the season goes on. And I think for them to have 2 goal line opportunities and for it to be Jones both times, maybe that's a sign of things to come. I just don't think it's likely that those all go to Daniel Jones instead of Jonathan Taylor as the year goes on. He's just such an up and down quarterback. Maybe he's like Sam Darnold last year or Baker Mayfield the year before, where he just needed a new scenery. I'm just not buying it, but I just don't think that. I think that nobody's really buying it yet.
No.
And so maybe in another week, if he does it again, then there's a sell window and you can get somebody to pay a first or 2 seconds. But I think you'd be hard pressed to get somebody to even pay a second right now because I think people are not falling for this again with Daniel Jones. And I think it's best to probably hold. If you're on a full rebuild, why do you still have him? Like but I guess you can get rid of him for a second. I would do that.
Yeah. I agree. I don't think it's going to happen. And if he could string along a couple good weeks after this, like it only, fires up, it lights the fire even more to really move him off of your team. But, I think those are the guys for sure that if you can, obviously, like you said, you hold Daniel Jones right now, but if you can get the opportunity to sell him, you can do it, do it. These next guys, we're debating, right? They're tough because I think we see a path. Three men in the NFL that Quentin Johnston, Justin Fields, and Travis Etienne. We're going to start Quentin Johnston because this was another one where it was an outlier game, or at least we felt like it was an outlier. But I think, we talked to some of the guys who have, actually Dustin spoke on this, one of the co-hosts of Debbie Dojo, and he told us he's holding Quentin Johnston at this point because he showed some flashes in the game that weren't just, this was on a broken play where it just ended up as a touchdown. No, he had 5 catches on 7 targets and 2 touchdowns, and he looked really good doing it. And we know that, he was a first-round talent, and also that he was a little bit more of a raw player. But I think with the way that he's looking at that offense with Ladd McConkey, with Keenan Allen, him being kind of that third target on that team or third target in the reads could actually be a really good thing for Quentin Johnston and possibly his development. And Jim Harbaugh still, he knows what he did to him in the semifinal game against TCU when Harbaugh was with Michigan. I think he sees something still in Quentin Johnston, and I think that at this point, Quentin Johnston is also a hold.
Yeah, so we say this was kind of an anomaly game for him, but this is 2 games in a row, really, 2 regular season games in a row. Now, he did have a bad playoff game, but he was 13 for 186 in Week 18 last year. And I think it seems like they're making a concerted effort to get him the ball. I don't necessarily think this is going to happen, but I see the upside of him being a Jamison Williams of this offense, where he's the deep threat. You've got some really good underneath receivers. And, he's the deep threat that kind of gets overlooked and gets one-on-one coverage and gets big plays. So, yeah, I like him. Still very young, first-round pick pedigree. They seem to really like him there. And so, obviously he's had some issues with drops in the past. So, I wouldn't overpay for him right now. No. But yeah, I wouldn't be looking to sell. I don't think this is as fluky as some people think it is. I was saying in the offseason, he was one of my favorite late round best ball targets because I think he's going to have games. He'll probably have games where he scores 0, right? But he'll have games like this where he'll score 25, 30, and he'll really help you. So I think just having that expectation, he's going to be a very up and down player, but there is a lot of upside. And if he strings together a couple of these and you can get a first for him, I'm fine moving off of him. But for now, I think it's worth it to probably hold.
Yeah, like you said, I'm not trying to acquire him, but also I have him in multiple leagues where I'm holding and really waiting to see what kind of happens with this LA offense. It was, in some of the startups I did in the offseason, I was getting him in the 13th round or later. And so it just feels like free money at that point.
Would you trade Hollywood straight up for him?
I would definitely sell Hollywood to get Quentin Johnston at this point because I believe in what Quentin Johnston is more than Hollywood.
Would you play Hollywood in the 3rd? No. Too much.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I'd rather just hold the 3rd and Hollywood and hope to sell Hollywood for something else.
Yeah.
Now the next guy, and Austin, I have to preface this by saying that you are a big believer in Justin Fields at this point, and we're both winning off of some shares at this point. Yes. Last week was awesome. And fellow content creator Chev is also a big believer in Justin Fields and the belief that he could be, at least in 2025, a top 5 QB asset just because of what we know he can do with his legs. And honestly, he looked really good in the passing game last week. Yeah. Really good. We didn't expect that from him.
I've been banging the drum on Justin Fields, the fantasy quarterback, is an elite asset. I think there's questions about where he ranks in the NFL echelon, right? But as long as he's getting starts and the Jets, they signed him to a deal where he's barring injury, he'll be their quarterback probably every game for the next 2 years at least. When he's on the field, he produces. 17 out of his last 30 starts, he's been a top 8 fantasy QB in 4-point passing touchdown leagues. Now, I know some are 6, but in a standard 4-point passing touchdown league, 17 out of the last 30. He has been a top 8. So we're not just talking about being a QB1. We're talking about being, a difference-making quarterback. That's 57% of his starts in the top 8. Yeah, you could argue he's been a more, over that time period, over those last 2.5 years, a more consistent fantasy quarterback than Patrick Mahomes. He's been a more consistent fantasy quarterback than, I know this guy had a big week this week, but than Justin Herbert. And he's so much cheaper. I think you can probably get him for 1 first right now. He's been more consistent than CJ Stroud. That's another one. I really like him. He's a guy that in the offseason was like, if you want to go heavy wide receiver early and wait on quarterback, he's a guy you can get in the 7th round, 8th round.
Yeah.
And he's a great value. In redraft, you could get him 13th round, 14th. Sometimes there was some redraft where he would be there in the last round.
Go undrafted.
So people are very low on him, especially after the bad preseason. This is only so much you can see from preseason.
Exactly.
When he's on the field, he scores points. I think he's a buy right now. I would buy him for a single first if I needed a quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I would if I had him.
I don't know that I'm selling for a single first.
Yeah, no,
if somebody's coming to me.
Yeah.
So, one thing to say, crazy stat: 72.7% completion percentage week 1, highest completion percentage for all quarterbacks in week 1. That was Justin Fields, and it's 2025. We didn't think we'd be saying this, but I at this point I'm holding on Justin Fields, even on a rebuilding or a retooling team, because we know that his value could possibly grow even further from this.
Everybody saw that Steelers-Jets game being an offensive shootout, right? That was expected.
God, lowest point total for a game for week 1 in the last 5 years, and then they go way over and score almost 70 points. So
I think
that
was
awesome.
it the second highest scoring game behind the Bills-Ravens from last week?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
maybe 30 points is not a sustainable thing, but I think he's going to be he has a very solid floor with his rushing upside, and I think he's a back end QB1 that you got for low end QB2 prices all offseason. And so you're profiting at this point. And I think overall pretty much a hold or a buy.
Yeah, no, for sure. It feels good in the leagues that I have him in. Last guy we're going to talk about, Travis Etienne. And I mean, I think there was conversation throughout all offseason. Is it Etienne? Is it Bashal Tootin? Is it Tank Bigsby? And now we see, after week 1, Tank Bigsby is shipped out to Philly. Tootin, of course, we see a little bit more of a role for him, but that's Travis Etienne's backfield in 2025. There's no doubt about that for me. It'll be interesting to see the following weeks how that snap share ends up changing now with Bigsby gone and with Tootin getting a little bit more of a role. But I do still think he's going to be the running back 1 on the depth chart and getting featured in the offense.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I mean, we talked about him as a potential buy, in one of our early shows in the offseason. I think the window's closed. I just don't think you're going to get him for less than a first at this point, and I would not pay a first. I'd probably sell him for a first. I think there's a chance that today is the highest value he'll ever be for the rest of his career, just because it's like, wow, Tank Bigby's gone. They believe in him. I think if I had to place a bet, I would say he's going to be a top 15 running back this year. I think just with the workload that he's probably going to get. I just don't know what that looks like into the future. And so, I just think at this point you probably miss the buy window, and he's not the type of player that has a lot of insulated value where I would be willing to pay a first. If somebody was willing, somebody was willing to give you ETN and a third for Kamara, something like that. Maybe I'd do that tier off, get the younger asset and a pick, maybe.
Yeah.
But otherwise, I probably would just hold ETN if I have him.
Yeah.
Unless someone wants to give me a first, and then I might do it. But I wouldn't. I just think at this point his value is probably going to be in season as a guy that's getting a big workload. It's probably going to be a first, and I wouldn't want to pay that right now. I think this is amazing news for ETN. If you bought him low in the offseason, you got him low in a startup, you're loving it. It's already
Right.
paid huge dividends, and I think that there's no reason to think he's not going to be a solid RB2 this whole year.
I mean, at that point, you're the contender, and you're holding him, hoping that he, at least wins you a championship this year. And then if you're a retooling team, like you said, if you come across a first for him, that's free money right there.
Yeah.
Definitely sell him for that. So yeah, I think it's ETN on a contract year. Bashal, they drafted Bashal Tutin in the 4th. Who knows if they're trying to, ending, just say they're going to walk away from any deal with ETN with Jacksonville, and he goes somewhere else. Could get a second contract and possibly be productive after that. But I think, like you said, I think this is the highest his value is probably going to get to.
Also, too many people bank on those day 3 running backs. It's like I think they like Bashal Tutin, but even if ETN walks next year, there's a good chance they sign someone else or draft someone else. I think some people that are gonna now be too excited about Bashal Tutin. I've even seen a lot of LaQuint Allen hype, and it's fine. I mean, I think that those guys obviously they go up a rung in the depth chart with Tank Bigsby gone, but I mean we saw a lot of the similar excitement with Tank Bigsby just a year ago. So, I think that when you have teams don't necessarily have a succession plan at running back. Usually we have this guy until his contract's out, and then we figure it out after that. It's rare that it's a guy that's like, oh, we drafted this guy to be the successor. It just doesn't happen as much with running back as it does with other positions. And so I would say have tempered expectations for Tutin. Obviously, Bigsby leaving is good news for him, but I think people that are kind of writing the narrative of ETN might be gone next year and it'll be Tutin's backfield, I think have a little bit of tempered expectations. I don't think he's the type of player that's ever going to be a workhorse. Doesn't mean he can't be a fantasy producer and an electric change of pace guy. But I could be wrong, but I think that they drafted him to be a guy that's a complementary player. So I think I think value him that way. And if you get something more on top of that, have it be a bonus. So just don't overpay right now.
Yeah, I mean, you see the offenses where it's happened before with Blake Corum going to the Rams, Grendo going to the 49ers. Mm-hmm. It never ends up being just that perfect succession like you're talking about. So, definitely interesting to pay attention to with that Jacksonville running back room as time goes on. But let's talk about the 2 hottest names in fantasy right now. And you looked at the show notes, so but Harold Fannin Jr. and Emeka Egbuka, right? We talked about Egbuka a little bit earlier. And how, possibly getting him involved in some deals. But Harold Fannin Jr., let's talk about him first. We see one game with him as a rookie, and same thing for Egbuka. And Harold Fannin gets involved more, I think, what was it? A little bit less of a snap share than Njoku, but has a more productive day with more targets and has more catches and has a more productive fantasy day. Mm-hmm. And people are going hot in the streets right now for Fannin. I mean, I saw Fannin sell for a first. I think Chris sold Fannin for Fannin in a 4th for a first. And I'm like, man, where can I find these deals? Because if you can be able to sell a tight end like that we have no idea what's going to happen and get a first out of it, I'm going to take that deal 10 out of 10 times.
Yeah. So Fannin's up to tight end 9 on keep trade cut. Njoku is tight end 12. I would rather have David Njoku than Harold Fannin. Maybe call me a party pooper, but I still think David Njoku. I mean, he's still young. He's still a great. I don't know. Watch it. The Fannin hype will build, and Njoku and Fannin will both have good games. And Njoku's going to get a 4-year contract with Cleveland this year, and the water will be doused on Fannin. Now, I like Harold Fannin a lot. I think he is a phenomenal talent. He was unreal in college at Bowling Green. We've seen him be able to handle a big workload. I think he's going to be a great asset. I like him a lot. But people are really overreacting to 1 week. And I think we need to see that more sustained. I think Njoku, we've seen him do things with Flacco in the past. Njoku's on the field more. He's going to catch some touchdowns. He's going to have some big games. So, I mean, to me, as much as I hate to say it, like I'm mostly holding Fannin.
Yeah.
Because I did draft quite a bit of him in the 3rd round. But if somebody came to me and was like, I'll give you Njoku or I'll give you Hawkinson straight up, which is like the range that he's being ranked in now, I don't know how you turn that down. It's just it's too much of a sure thing right now. So that's just me. But
I saw in our Discord somewhere earlier, somebody was like, the ceiling is tight end 5. I'm like, could it happen? Maybe, but I'm not going to bank on
to be fair, it's like besides Bowers and McBride and then Kittle, but Kittle's hurt now. It's wide open. So yeah, I mean, nobody else really performed. I mean, you got Tucker Kraft, Sam Laporta, Tyler Warren. I think Tyler Warren's probably in contention for that tight end 3 now. But it's very wide open. So it sounds outrageous to say tight end 5, but it's really just 2 or 3 guys, and then it's just a tier of about 10 people. So I think it's conceivably there, the ceiling. But I just think it's a long shot outcome in a bad offense with another tight end and some good wide receivers and possibly a rookie quarterback coming in midseason if they're struggling. There's just a lot of things there. Like, just don't overpay. Don't pay a first for him right now.
Yeah. I think that's definitely the answer with Fannin. I agree with you wholeheartedly, Austin. I don't know that I would trade Fannin for Njoku straight up, but I think the other tight ends, like you said, Hawkinson. If you got Laporta straight up for Fannin, do not turn that down. But I also kind of see, being a Lions fan, I am a realist a little bit with Laporta, and I don't think he's the tight end 3 in Dynasty, but he's worth that, at least at this point. As far as Egbuka goes, I think it's pretty clear cut. We talked about it a little bit earlier of deals where you could try and up tier from Egbuka, but I don't think I would sell Egbuka at this point or find a way to down tier. If I'd rather hold. He's a perfect asset for a rebuilder, retooling team. And honestly, as we're seeing right now, even probably great on a contender. Yeah. So, the only way that you make it a little bit sweeter on a contender is if you, like we talked about earlier, up tiering possibly to that next tier of JSN, going up another tier of Amon-Ra St. Brown, doing those deals. But right now I'm holding on Egbuka.
If you can trade Egbuka in a second and get Nico Collins, are you going to do it?
Yes, wholeheartly yes. Okay, so as a Nico stan as well, but
so in Keep Trade Cut, they're now 6 spots apart in ADP. So in the same, basically around the same value. So Nico Collins is wide receiver 10, 22nd overall player. Emeka Egbuka, wide receiver 13, 28th overall player. I think you might be able to get that done in some leagues. I think that's one. Would you trade him straight up for Garrett Wilson?
Yes.
He's ranked ahead of Garrett Wilson right now in trade cut. So it's tight. I think I could see it going on a contender. On a contender, I could see it.
I'd go Garrett Wilson on a contender. But for the future, I'd try to, I don't know if I go straight up. If anything, I'd try to squeeze out a third or a second, if possible, from Garrett Wilson to get Egbuka.
Yeah. Would you who do you prefer right now? You have a rookie draft today for some reason drafting after week 1. Are you taking Egbuka or Tat?
Tat.
Okay. Tat, because is above Tat as well on Keep Trade Cut now.
Like, this is the overreaction that we're talking about. Like, it's just trust all of the stuff that you had been going into from the offseason into this, and you can't base it off of a small sample size of 1 week.
Right.
That's crazy, Austin. To be honest, I've fallen so much from looking at Keep Trade Cut because, eventually you get a gauge of your own dynasty value, right? Like, Keep Trade Cut is a great tool to help you build that, but also Keep Trade Cut is not perfect in its own way. One, you've talked about it before. It is graded on half-point PPR. So a lot of leagues that we're playing in, it isn't accurate to what the scoring settings are for what we play. Doubly, this is crowdsourced, right? So a lot of this overreaction ends up going into their rating of how high they're bringing up players. The fact that he is above, you said he's above Garrett Wilson?
Yeah, he's wide receiver 13. Wilson is 14. McMillan is 15. AJ Brown is 17.
Yeah. So if you can get AJ Brown and a third, or AJ Brown and a second off of Igbuka, that on a contender like that, you should probably do that.
So value wise, they would have Igbuka is further ahead of AJ Brown than Nico Collins is ahead of Igbuka. So I mean,
Yeah.
in theory, value wise, he's going. Igbuka will be an AJ Brown in a second. So the reason why, I think the keep trade cut is like I actually really like that it builds in the overreactions and that it's crowdsourced, because as long as you know how to use the tool, it's like this is what people are thinking about these players right now.
Yes.
And it kind of gives you a gauge of something that you didn't even think you could do. Can I get a rebuilding team? It's like, oh man, I wish I had drafted Igbuka. Can I get AJ Brown in a second, or even AJ Brown in a third, and I'm a contender? I might do that. So
Right.
I love Igbuka, and I really wish I had more. I only have one share of him, and I was telling you this. It's like even if I got an amazing deal, I don't know if I could trade him because I just don't want to have 0 shares. So I think he's going to be a great asset. But again, some of these guys get so juiced up, especially when you're talking about a guy who scoring 2 touchdowns. Again, 2 touchdowns are kind of a variable stat. He's not going to score 2 touchdowns every week. We know that Chris Godwin's coming back at some point. Jalen McMillan hasn't been playing. He's got a neck injury, but they expect him back in midseason. So it's just going to get a little bit more crowded. And even though I think Igbuka is a great dynasty asset, if you're a contender and can capitalize on this value right now, like trading him in a second for Nico Collins, something like that, I would do. So there's different things to look at. It's kind of fun to evaluate and kind of capitalize on these overreactions, but you don't have to, right? I mean, if you believe in a player and you want to hold, in some ways you can be overreacting to the overreaction, right? And make a trade that you later regret. And you're basically just doing the trade because you feel like it's an overreaction.
Yeah.
I think we want to be careful with that too.
Yep. So perfect example of this, and this is actually going to tie in perfectly with the last segment of our show. And actually this player isn't even in our show notes tonight, but I want to bring him up because I have been, I went on to Tyler's Friday night from the forum show, and I stuck my neck out there for this guy because I believed a lot of the camp hype and was really like, but then it started to get a little crazy. People were starting to overreact during camp about Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt or Bill. And with this, right? Like I only have 1 share of him in Dynasty. I have like 1 share of him in redraft. And I was in the same predicament you are, because I was seeing him go for seconds. And I was like, man, I would love to get a second for Bill. In giving up Bill. And I was like, I just can't do it because I'm like, I want to hold 1 share and see what happens here. And like you said, don't overreact to the overreaction, because I do want to see. And then now, after watching last night's game, this is no news to anybody, but we see Austin Eckler go down with the Achilles tear, right? I feel terribly, feel awful for Austin Eckler. Great fantasy player, great football player. And honestly, one of the greatest Chargers running backs besides LaDainian Tomlinson. And you look back, he was an undrafted free agent, right? But now you see a path for JCM. We still don't know if they're going to sign somebody or possibly trade somebody to the Commanders to take over possibly that RB1 role. There's been some rumors about Kenneth Walker. There's been rumors some other running back rooms to give up a player to the Commanders. But there's a path now, and JCM is probably worth a first now at this point. You could probably get a first for JCM out of some of the crazy hype that people are going on. Man, I kind of want to ride it out with my 1 share.
I got a couple JCM shares, and I would be clicking accept so fast if I got a first. I don't think he could. He had 4 carries for 17 yards last night. He was the running back 3. He was playing behind Jeremy McNichols. Now, part of that is because they were behind, and he's less of a pass catching running back. So I think he'll have more opportunities. But I mean, Chris Rodriguez will be active. Now that even if they don't sign anybody, and so he'll get some touches. I think this is just going to be a committee backfield. I think this team could probably use like a Brian Robinson type player Um, but I think sometimes teams make those trades like, oh, we have an excess, and then somebody gets hurt, and you're like, man, we should have. It's kind of like last year.
Happens on fantasy teams too, right?
The 49ers got rid of Elijah Mitchell, and then immediately everybody on their team gets hurt. And so then, Jordan Mason went down, and they had to play Garindo, and then Garindo went down, and they started Patrick Taylor for a week. So, I mean, this happens to teams. It wouldn't surprise me if the Commanders went out and got somebody, but it also wouldn't surprise me if they just kind of tried to work with what they got. To me, if you can get a first for Bill, you have to do it, even if it's your only share. You have to do it.
Yeah.
I was trying to trade him for Javonte Williams straight up yesterday, and I couldn't get it done. So I don't know. Maybe it depends on the league. But yeah, I mean, I was not encouraged by his usage last night. So a lot of it is because they were behind the whole game. But he's a 7th round running back. I think no matter how talented he is, there's just such little investment that I don't think that he's going to be a workhorse. And
I mean, even when you have in NFL history, we've seen some of these guys like James Robinson, who was an undrafted free agent, who had a great season, right? Mm-hmm. It was one great season before, Travis Etienne comes into town, but he was, draft capital does matter at the end of the day. Like, we want to act like it doesn't matter. It does have a sticking point in the NFL, and there's a lot less commitment when it comes to a back that like JCM, like James Robinson back in the day, or, crazy enough that Austin Eckler was one of the few outliers, right? But like, how often does that happen? Not often at all.
Well, let me be clear. A guy drafted in the 7th round that you got either in the 4th round of your rookie draft or as a free agent that had 82 yards and a touchdown in his NFL debut, you've already made a profit on this player. So great pick. I like Jacory Cross-Keemer. It's just the hype's getting out of control. And honestly, if you can trade him in the next few days for a first before they sign somebody else or before next week, because I think that there's going to be some disappointment when he goes out, when it's still a committee, when there's either bring someone else in or Chris Rodriguez has more of a role, or Jeremy McNichols, who's still ahead of him on the depth chart, is getting a role. I just think a first for him is, I mean, you drafted him in the 4th. Just take I probably would still trade him for a second, to be honest with you.
And I think, hopefully none of your league mates are watching this show, because, they're going to be a little bit wizened up to what we're talking about here.
I need it before we post. I need to send some offers.
Yes.
But good stuff.
So we're going to finish up with 3 more players, and 1 from the Commanders and 2 from the Packers. Terry McLaurin, Matthew Golden, and Tucker Kraft. And I think Terry McLaurin is falling in the range of somebody, after last night's game, I think you could definitely buy in a little bit on some overreaction of, there was some stuff on X that I was seeing where it was like Terry McLaurin coming out, after he signs his $300 or, $30 million a year contract. It was like some fat guy just running on a football field. I'm like, come on, man. We know Terry's better than that. It just didn't end up connecting last night with Jaden Daniels. Hopefully I did see some stuff about Jaden Daniels having an MRI on his knee. We'll see how that develops over the next week. But I mean, if Jaden Daniels is playing the rest of the season, Terry McLaurin is his guy. So, and I also, he signed the contract. Like, guys, let's not overreact to this. We know Terry McLaurin is a great receiver. Yeah,
I don't really have any concerns. I'm like, as a guy that owns a lot of Terry McLaurin shares, I obviously don't love the start.
Yeah,
but you had the first game, a game that got ahead early and kind of took, relied on the run game in the second half. Then the second game, playing against what looks like it's going to be one of the best defenses in the NFL. I mean, they completely shut down the Lions week 1. We just talked about the whole team. I think he'll be fine. I don't. I mean, I think it's one of those things where it's like he's a veteran receiver, so you're hoping, once you get to 30 years old, you need a guy that's performing right now. So there probably will be some panic selling that happens with him just because it's like, man, I don't want an old guy that's also not scoring. So,
Yeah.
I think there could be a chance to buy low. But I do think he's a bit of a wait and see. But I'm not too worried about him.
Yeah. Last two guys, right? Matthew Golden.
Yeah.
Where are you feeling on him right now?
Man, opportunity should be there. I mean, Jaden Reed is going to miss some time. Christian Watson's obviously out. He didn't catch a single pass last night. He had a couple rushes, one where he looked pretty good, but he just isn't getting super involved in the offense. To think about those owners that drafted him ahead of Igbuka, and I know it happened in some leagues that are probably pretty disappointed right now. It's tough. I definitely think I think he's probably a hold if you drafted him in the first, early second. I just don't panic sell, but yeah, I think the concern's starting to rise. I think in the next couple of weeks without Jaden Reed, if he's still not performing, I'd get pretty worried. I'm
going to play devil's advocate here, right? It was actually, I posted it in the Discord. It was a tweet from Underdog Fantasy that he had 1.5 points yesterday off 15 rush yards. Mm-hmm. He had 2 passes that he ended up not being able to bring in, I believe. I mean, and honestly, I think it was less him. From what I remember, it was, some accuracy issues from Jordan Love. But yeah, he almost caught a 90-yard touchdown and almost caught a 30-yard pass. And the unactualized points that he would have had in last night's game, had he reeled those catches in, would have been 28 fantasy points. So it's like a couple of catches in the script is different, but he didn't. And so we're questioning. And like you're saying, I think he's a whole.
On that same team, they have the king of unrealized points, Dontavian Wicks.
And he was actually catching passes, as our friend Chev says, the man with Megan Fox thumbs. But he was somehow catching passes with those Megan Fox thumbs.
Yeah.
Dobbs
looked pretty good. I'll say that.
He did. And I think it's just Dobbs has always been underrated because he's never really gotten a full chance. So maybe even with him, maybe he's the guy with Jaden Reed out. Yeah, but we can't go off this show without talking about my guy here, and that is Tucker Kraft. He is, to me, the best receiving player, without Jaden Reed especially, on the Packers offense. And we were talking about Discord today, right? Could he see himself climb to that tight end 3 by the end of this season? I kind of see tight end 4, tight end 5 as the possible outcome that we see. Especially with this offense really starting to ascend a little bit more. We're and he seems to be that trusted target for Jordan Love.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think he had a huge game last night. Obviously, week 1 he scored 10 points, depending on your format, but he scored double-digit points. But he only got 2 passes for 16 yards and a touchdown week 1. So that. To me, it's like, again, touchdown variance. And he had a lot of his points on one play, yesterday. So I like Tucker Kraft a lot. I think as far as the tight ends go, I think like you said, I think he's got the ceiling to be a top 5 dynasty tight end by the end of the year. He was very consistent last year. Obviously, with Jaden Reed and Christian Watson both out, I would guess at least 6 weeks for each of them still at this point. He's got a massive opportunity to really get big target share. So yeah, I like Tucker Kraft a lot. I just think there may be a little bit of, week 1, he was not very involved. He did he got 2 passes. One of them happened to be a touchdown. And then yesterday he had 1 big play, and then he was pretty involved otherwise. But the reason why it was a monster game is because of the 1 big play. Again, like I said, it's one of those things where it's like, you don't take away the big plays because they did happen. But I think we've yet to see like that consistency that I'd like to see from him. So if he can go out there, target guy for the next few weeks, like we talked about, the tight end position, other than McBride and Bowers, there's a lot of question marks, and it wouldn't surprise me to see him get up there into the top 5. I think he's got the talent to do it, and they're in a great offense, has a good rapport with Jordan Love. So. Yeah, that was a guy that the window's probably, like ETN, window's probably closed on buying Tucker Kraft. Very highly.
I bought a fair amount of my shares in the off season, right? And it was mostly actually in startups. And
Yeah.
where I was really getting in the startups was 8th, 9th, 10th round. And at that point, when you're taking your tight end 1, you're feeling really good at that
Yeah.
point. Rather than taking Bowers, McBride. I mean, even Kittle, was going somewhere in the dynasty startups during the summer, around the 4th or 5th round, right? So it's just, again, we're talking about where you can capitalize and where you can really make those differences. And this show, again, is about the overreactions that we have on players. I think we just want to be careful with Tucker Kraft that it was a pretty exciting game. And I think what I'll say to that, Austin, I know you said, the one play, and then you kind of saw some utilization. There were some plays outside of the big play where, he was taking chunk yards. He'd get a reception. If you're getting, 0.5 to full point tight end premium added onto that, and he's getting 10, 12, even 7 yards, just continuing to add on to make chunks away, you're seeing those fantasy points start to stack up in your leagues. And at this point, I'm feeling pretty good going into the weekend slate with 27 points in multiple of my leagues at this point. So
yeah, I mean, he had the 57-yard catch, but he ended up with 124 yards. So he did have 67 other yards. So it's not like it was it didn't even count for half of his yards. So yeah, I mean, I probably overstated that a little bit, but
the week one was definitely kind of an outlier. That's all right, that's not so pretty. But I think there's also that offense was starting to kind of start to gel. But as far as closing remarks for this episode, Austin, this is about overreactions, right? Like, we want to make sure when we're looking from a dynasty lens that we don't look at 1 week and we don't freak out. And if anything, we want to start to look at the people in our leagues who are overreacting, who are looking at these other situations and, hey, I'm going to sell AJ Brown for a first. I can't have him on my team. He's not. I'm not going to be able to contend with him.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll take him.
Yeah. Well, so I think what's important is that we talked about the overreactions from a week, but week 1 is a data point. And I think once you get multiple other data points, once you get into week 2 and week 3, and then things start, these data points start to become trends, I do think you need to be aware of some people that are going to be on the, I'm still sticking with my priors regardless. So you're going to have people that are like, man, this guy was a 2nd round startup pick, so I can't trade him. Or he's, or I have him valued so much higher. I think I'm buying low on a guy that maybe is going to have a bad season, right? So I think you got to be careful not to completely discount week 1. It's a data point, but we need more data points to put together to build that narrative on where things are going to go. So it does matter, but I think you just have to be careful not to make it too many from the hip decisions based off of just 1 week.
Absolutely.
Remember, we've seen, besides rookies, we've seen all of these guys play football before. So just because it's the first game of the new season, it doesn't mean that it's the only data point you should be looking at. I think that's important to remember.
For sure. And I definitely, if you guys want to continue to bounce ideas off of our brains, we would love to get connected with you, right? We've told you in previous episodes, please get connected with us via social media, whether it's, in the YouTube comments here with FSA and Grindhouse, reaching out to us even via our other social media, TikTok, X. Reach out to us and get into our Discord, because that's really where a lot of our conversations happen, where we talk a lot about, potential deals that you can make and where kind of the community sits on some of these players, and really get ahead of your league mates in that way. So it's been a fun one, Austin. Do you have any other remarks in regards to the episode tonight or anything else in the future?
No. Yeah. I mean, this was a fun one. Join us on the Discord, Dynasty Gambit. We have some great conversations going there. We got a lot of other experts, like some of the guys we talked about, like the Debbie Dojo guys are in there. Chev is in there. So yeah, lots of fun conversations go on in there. And yeah, we appreciate everybody watching, and we'll have more content soon.
Yeah, definitely hit that like button, share our content. We'd love to get connected with you guys. This is another great episode. We'll see you on the next one. Have a good night,
Yep.
guys.